It is officially fall, and today I thought I would show you guys how to use Attain color for nail art. I'm going to be using one of my favorite colors, Attain Chartreuse, and we are going to do Oogie Boogie. So I'm going to be using Attain Pitch, which is our black color. I'm just going to put some on a silicone mat. A lot of our kits actually come with either a black or white silicone mat that you can use for nail art. And I'm using the Attain nail art brush. I'm loading up my brush with just a little bit of product. I already have 2 coats of Attain Chartreuse cured on my nail, and I'm going right in on the sticky layer to do some nail art. You'll notice that our Attain color gels are a lot thicker than traditional gel polish. And that is completely on purpose. When I developed Attain, I wanted a brand that could do all of the things I love to do without having to have 7 different formulations of a specific color. And so I actually formulated Attain color so it would be thick enough for nail art, but you could also use it for full color on your nails. And I love this because even if I apply nail art right onto the sticky layer of my other color, it doesn't feather, it doesn't bleed. You can see that the black is super pigmented. So I can go straight from full color nails right into the nail art, and I can take my time, which is the most important thing. Doing nail art with gel is my favorite thing because you can take your time, you can adjust things, you can move things around. And then once you're happy with a specific portion that you've done, you can flash cure that in your lamp to save it. That way, if you make a mistake later in your nail art, you don't have to start from scratch. When you wipe off the mistake, nothing else will get wiped off. So I'm going in, doing Oogie Boogie's eyes as well as the beginning of his mouth. And I'm just picking up more product as I need it. A lot of people think that nail art is really hard to do, and I'll tell you one of the secrets that really helped me get better at nail art. Instead of getting overwhelmed by looking at things as a whole picture, what I started to do is I started to recognize shapes. So if I can identify that something looks like a square or an oval or a triangle, all I have to do is break the image down into those shapes and replicate each section. So the corners of his mouth are kind of a triangle, then it goes into sort of a square rectangular shape. His lips in the center are more triangular. And then you can always add more product, pull the product around to make those finite adjustments. So even those eyes that I did before, I haven't cured anything yet. Nothing is feathering or bleeding. And this is exactly why we made Attain color the way we made it. Then I'm going to give him some eyebrows, so he looks a little evil and angry like he's supposed to. And then I usually throughout my nail art will take a break and flash cure. So flash curing is a really great technique. It means you're just exposing the product to a few seconds of light. Like I said, that's going to lock in that first layer of product that I already did. And that way, if I make a mistake on his chin or, other areas that I'm putting on the nail right now, I can always wipe those off with some Attain Clean Cleanser, and I don't have to start completely over. So Oogie Boogie is a burlap sack, and he's got little kind of stitches everywhere. So I'm adding just the most fine stitches around his mouth. They don't have to be perfect because if we want them to kind of look a little rough, they can be a little scratchy looking. Depends on the style. Some people like a little bit more finished, cartoony look. So I'm just adding those fine little stitches around his mouth. And then I'm actually going to end up covering up these bottom stitches in a second when I show you guys a really cool use for Attain Strength Powder. But I'm going to put these here as a little visual placeholder for myself so that I can start to visualize what this is ultimately going to look like at the end. And so you can see these stitches around his mouth really start to make him look like Oogie Boogie. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll look up pictures for inspo on the internet and kind of replicate things. But I do kind of eyeball and just freehand a lot of my nail art. And trust me, with practice, you'll get a lot better. And by just looking at recognizing shapes, it will also make things a lot easier. And then I'll start to make the taper of the top of his head. Oogie Boogie's head kind of tapers into a little point, which I'm not going to be able to add all the way on this nail, but I like to add the little suggestion by tapering in with some black and giving the illusion of the beginning of his little tip top of his hat. And then once you're happy with everything, you can go ahead and cure. Now, Attain Strength Powder is such a versatile product, and I'm so excited to show you guys this today because Attain Strength Powder can be used for all types of things, including nail art. So I'm going to show you guys how to make your own 3D nail art gel using a little bit of Attain Adhesion. So I'm going to put some Attain Adhesion here on my silicone mat, just squishing out a little bit here. The Attain Adhesion, because it is a thicker builder in a bottle, it's going to help create the texture that I want, but it's also going to help dilute this Attain Chartreuse color just a little bit so that I get really good curing, even if I'm applying it in thick 3D layers. Then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of Attain Strength Powder. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to mix this all together to create a 3D gel. So I just mix the Attain Adhesion and the color together, make sure the opacity is the right opacity that I want. And then just like adding flour to dough, I'm going to gradually add a little bit more powder as I go until I get the texture that I'm looking for. So depending on what you're trying to create, you're going to want to actually look for the consistency of almost like a putty where it's not super dry and crumbly. It self-levels just a teensy bit, but it's going to hold its shape. Then I'm going to use my nail art brush. I'm going to pick up a dollop of this 3D gel that I've just created, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to give Oogie Boogie some 3D eyebrows. So I like to touch down in the area where I want the thickest amount of product, and then I just kind of pull away. So once you're happy with the placement, the thickness, all of that, you're going to want to cure this to lock it in place. Then I'm going to add his other eyebrow. Again, just picking up a little bit more product, laying that down and pulling away so that the thickest part is in the center and cure. Then I'm going to pick up more product and I'm going to lay this down on his bottom lip. I'm going to end up covering up those stitches that I painted on there, but that's okay because for me, it just helps me visualize where I want to place everything. And I can actually see them just ever so slightly through this 3D gel. So it just gives me a visualization. And then once I'm happy, I'm going to cure this in place. I'm going to go back and add just a little bit more as a second layer, just so I get more projection on that bottom lip. When you're working with 3D gel, usually it's easier to work in layers. And then now that I've got all that cured, I can go back with my black and I'm going to replace those stitches that I covered up. But since I can kind of see them, it's probably hard to see on camera, but for me, I can see them just ever so slightly. So it gives me an idea of where to put them back because I was happy with the placement. So I'm just going to add those. And so now that I have this 3D lip, it's going to make them look even more realistic. It just makes his face pop so much. And then I'm just going to go back and add just a teeny bit more around his eyebrows, just to kind of connect that and cover up the edge of that 3D gel. Then even though I couldn't fit this on his hat the way he normally is, I'm going to add just a couple stitches to his forehead just to make him look a little bit more Oogie Boogie and fill in that empty space. And I'm going to go ahead and cure this. You can clean up any of our Attain mats with just Attain Clean Cleanser and a wipe. They clean up really nicely. And that way you can just use your mat as your protective placemat for working as well as for nail art. Then I'm going to go in with Attain Matte Top Coat. I love matte top coat when doing caricatures or any type of nail art. It just, for me, makes everything really pop and look cute and cartoony. So I'm going to apply a nice thin coat over Oogie Boogie's entire face. And that way he's just going to look very cohesive and kind of hand-drawn. With matte top coat, you want to be very careful to make sure you get all the edges well coated so that you don't end up with like a little bit of a shiny perimeter around the nail. So I'm always very careful to make sure I get matte top coat all the way to the edge without touching the skin. And then what I'll do is I'll remove any excess from any areas that might have pooled because matte top coat can look a little milky sometimes. So you want to make sure you don't have any excess in any particular areas. And then I'm going to cure. Once your design is fully cured, you can go in with Attain Clean Cleanser and a wipe, Really scrub it down, get all of that inhibition sticky layer off, and then that's going to reveal that beautiful matte finish once it dries. And to me, the matte top coat is just the finishing touch that makes him look like burlap and makes him look really cartoony and hand-drawn. I am obsessed with my little 3D Oogie Boogie nail, and I hope you loved this tutorial. Happy Halloween, guys!